This week's SyrupCast is sponsored by Roam Mobility. Stop paying roaming fees. For unlimited talk, text, and data while traveling in the US, visit roammobility.com and order your SIM card today. Welcome to SyrupCast episode 24 on December 5th, 2014. 1 month before CES. As always, I'm joined by my cohorts in crime, my crimes in cohorts, question mark. Douglas Soltis, how are you, sir?
I now have coffee.
You delayed us to get coffee because you didn't think ahead.
No. Yeah, when has that happened before?
Never before has that happened in life. And Jane McIntaggart, how are you?
Hi. How are you?
Was that a hi or an I?
Wow.
That was an A.
Oh, that was like a high
That was a celebration because it's Friday.
Celebration. Everybody.
I thought you were gonna be like celebrate good times. Come on.
No, we're not on a cruise ship.
It's a celebration.
So
People are gonna think that we're making an announcement. People are gonna think we're gonna Oprah them phones. You get a phone and you get a phone. All this celebrating.
They get a podcast. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. That's way more valuable than a phone.
Way more cause for celebration.
Agreed. This week is a slow one, but let's get right into it. Yodaphone 2 was announced on December 2nd, and review units had gone out to everybody but us. Womp womp. But what was interesting about this device is that it has an e-ink display on the back. It's a high-end Android phone with an e-ink display to mirror what's on the front display. But more than that, Yodaphone announced earlier this year that it was going to be opening an office in Canada and perhaps even moving its entire operations to Waterloo or Toronto.
So they doubly dissed us.
So they doubly... No, because they actually just launched it in Russia and some parts of Europe. But this seems to be one of the first hybrid phones that doesn't fail on all accounts, and it's also one of those devices that you realize, oh man, why didn't Samsung do this before them, or why didn't HTC or Huawei or whatever think of this? Why did it take a small?
Why didn't
Russian...
Amazon make an e-ink phone?
True. Oh, that would have been way better than the Fire phone.
Burn.
So, reading the reviews, it became quite apparent that something went right in the Yodaphone, and it took 2 iterations to get there. But when it comes out next year in Canada, hopefully, they said that it's probably coming. I've been reading a lot more on my phones recently because they're bigger and the screens are sharper, and I just have become more used to reading longer pieces of text on my phones. What do you guys think? Is this something that you would buy? I mean, it's pretty expensive. It's like $800, but should the price go down before it reaches North America if it's sold on a 2-year contract? Is this something you would even think about?
I just don't know why I need it. I don't get it. I have a smartwatch now.
What?
Ooh, wow.
Like, one of the things.
Wow.
One of the things that I had,
Wow.
that I liked about the Yodaphone, 1 and 2, when I played with them, was that it was like, oh, that's cool for notifications. So I can just have the notifications pop up on my phone when it's on the desk. I don't have to deal with the blinky light. It's just gonna pop up on the e-ink display. But I don't know. Do I need a second screen on my phone?
But it's mostly just for reading.
But I read on my Kindle.
That's short-sighted.
But most people don't want to carry around a Kindle anymore.
Yeah.
But who was I talking to yesterday?
Me?
I don't know. I was at an event yesterday, and so I was talking to someone, and they were saying that they were thinking of buying a Kindle because they were tired of reading on their phone because it was so uncomfortable. This is not going to fix that problem. Where it's
But then they need to get a bigger phone.
Yeah. Is that uncomfortable hand size or uncomfortable?
No, she was
their
like
eyes get
my
tired?
screen. Yeah, she was like the screen is small, so you can only display a certain amount of text. And
Oh, if you don't think that a Yoda Fab isn't coming.
A Yoda Fab? That
Yeah.
sounds
Yoda.
Like it'll
Fab Yoda.
debut in December 2015 alongside the Star Wars Episode 7 Force Awakens.
They'll probably, if it's gonna debut in 2015, December 2015, they'll announce it like in a couple months because that's what they did with the first generation. It was out for what, like 2 months, and then they were like, "Hey, Yoda Phone 2."
They didn't really have a distribution plan for the Yoda Phone. They just that was very much an experiment. I think that they realized that the second gen would be actually, and that's something that there's been a bit of a trend now with companies coming out with first gen products that are very much beta products that should not be on the market. Mm-hmm. And the Fire Phone was one of them. The Yoda Phone was one of them. Arguably, a lot of devices. The Apple Watch may be an example of that.
I don't think that Bezos would tell you that the Fire Phone was intended to be a beta product.
No,
I know
Microsoft
never said with their band product it was intentionally that.
Yeah.
But like, okay, so I think you were talking about the very surprised, like, why didn't other people do this? And I agree. I would definitely think that Amazon could have really rocked out a phone. It would have been more in line with their like core tech understanding. We talk all the time about just in terms of standard smartphones, the kind of compromises that you have to make to get that perfect ratio of what a phone's capacity can be. I think these hybrid devices or more specialized devices are even harder because you have to balance everything that a phone needs to do with your exceptional hybrid feature. I think with this phone, I was just thinking this morning that it's so cool, and if the e-ink actually works in a useful way, I was thinking if I could get a standard phone that looks as beautiful as this phone with just primarily an e-ink screen, not two screens, but one screen. Have a phone with a battery life that lasts for a week. It has a great camera, and I just use it as like I used to use it for text inputs. I don't play games on it. I don't watch movies on it, but I can check all my social feeds. I can read my emails, tweets, all that stuff, and I can take great photos. I think I would use that. I think I would use that phone all the time because it would work really, really well. It would last long. It would save on my eyes, and I would, in the opposite of what Jane's saying, like I already have a smartwatch, I would use that as like my primary text-based content consumption, and then when I want to do like movie stuff or game stuff, I go to a tablet or something else, or maybe I would just stop doing that and live a better life.
But then you're basically saying that all of your phone needs can be met with an e-ink display.
Yeah, that's a lie.
Yeah.
Well, so
you're even saying like when I wanted to do things that required like like games, or basically when I wanted to do things that required color and pictures, that you would move to a tablet, or why wouldn't you just flip your phone over and use the other side?
Well, because I'm assuming that having only an e-ink screen would cut the cost of the device in half, which would.
So you're saying you would buy like if someone made a phone that had only an e-ink display, that you would buy it?
I'm saying that this phone seems so cool that I'm very much interested in seeing someone take that a step farther. Yes.
Okay.
Because when I look at my phone usage, I don't do a lot of games and stuff on my phone. I don't do a lot of. I guess I do watch some videos and stuff on my phone.
It's not about the color. It's about the lag. It's about the refresh rate. An e-ink display is just completely inappropriate for content consumption. Like it would refresh once every 2 or 3 seconds. Like you'd basically get a very small approximation of what you're watching.
But when you say content consumption, you mean dynamic content consumption, right? So any content that I consume that's text-based, I think it's easier for me to just stop playing games or watching movies on my phone and have a phone that lasts for a week that's good on my eyes.
So this is the constant argument around retro devices in the in the era of constant smartphone use, right? Do we want to simplify our lives? Are smartwatches meant to simplify our lives by making us by discouraging us from taking out our phones so much. This big push towards smartwatches it's such an awkward marketing message because they're basically saying, and these are from the companies that want to sell you a smartphone, but they're saying, we know that you get addicted to your smartphone. We know that when you take out your smartphone, you end up, taking it out for a single purpose to check a notification and then end up using it for 10 minutes and then not realizing that you missed your streetcar stop. Like that is it's a serious problem, but that's not a solution to smartphone addiction, right? I think you're wanting an e-ink display for your smartphone to discourage you from playing Candy Crush is more about your mindset about playing Candy Crush.
No, not necessarily to discourage. I'm saying when I really look at what I use my phone for 80% of the time, it falls in line with something that an e-ink screen could provide.
Totally, and that's why there's an e-ink display on the rear.
Yeah, but I don't want to pay 800 euros for a phone, and I want double the battery life. I'm saying I would do the dual screen phone right now. I'm excited to play with it and pick it up. I think it's really cool. I'm saying that this hybridization has made me think more about, because we lament all the time that phones are all the same. They're all the same because they're all trying to do the same things. They're all trying to be essentially all in one bundle, and then they pinch around the margins. So if you're like, here's a phone that legitimately lasts for a week. It's got a beautiful design. They throw a great camera in there, and it's for people who just,
But then are you just the guy?
Communication.
Are you just the guy with the black and white CRT TV who's like, I don't need that. I don't need a plasma screen TV.
No.
I don't know. I see you, let's say, on your social network on your phone.
Content.
I know, but I see, let's say, on Twitter or something on your phone or Facebook, and then you see a picture, and then you click on it, and you're like, oh, it's all black and white and grainy. I see you getting banging the side of the TV, being like, why isn't the picture good?
Well,
I think daguerreotype,
The caveat with this is that I'm assuming that the development of doing a pure e-ink screen would enable them to, either up the refresh rate or keep the image crispness very sharp. But yeah, I'm at least open to it, is what I'm saying. I'm not sure if it would 100% work, but it's cool to see a phone being like, yeah, why don't people push this idea farther? Why can't we have, instead of Samsung making the active device, which is just a regular phone with a case attached to it, rather than you just buying a separate case, why are manufacturers trying to make devices that actually do different things or work in different ways? I think it's cool and it's exciting, to be honest.
Can you just get a case, an e-ink case for your phone, and then you would have all the
cases. Never any cases.
I forgot.
All nude all the time.
An e-ink case has been suggested. I think there was a Kickstarter project.
There's a Kickstarter project that got it doubled its goal. It met its goal twice over this past summer.
I'd rather take the Yoda than a Kludge.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, adding something to an existing product is really not feasible. But okay, yeah, this is called the Ink Case Plus. It seems pretty clunky. It's an always-on e-inked second screen. Uses the sports fitness app, ebook reader, display photos, and receive notifications from your existing smartphone. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, it looks like crap.
I guess, Doug, I agree with what you're saying. Smartphones are sort of boring now, and there has to be a bit more innovation, and I think Yoda Phone has done a good job with that. Another indication of this sort of clamoring for new form factors and new use cases is the Sonim, the XP7 Extreme Edition. That's, it's a bad name for a really interesting phone, and I've been using one for a couple of weeks.
Extreme Edition, or are you just
No, it's called it's called the Extreme Edition because they're focusing. So basically, Sonim is a U.S.-based OEM that created phones for verticals like oil and gas and pulp
extreme
and paper.
verticals.
Mm-hmm.
Don't diminish the ridiculousness of this product, please. No, it is. It's pretty ridiculous. It's actually It's quite impressive though when you think about how much you can do with this thing. It's the company's first Android phone, and it's waterproof, dustproof, shatterproof. Uh, it's got like a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, so it lasts like a week. It is.
It looks like it's like natural disaster proof.
It is. It's pretty much the best phone you can use when you want to take it anywhere.
To try and destroy it.
Yeah, and they sent us one to
huge,
try to
and
destroy it, and I mean, I've used these devices back when they were just selling kind of feature phones, and they're really tough to break. Like I managed to break one, but it took me a long time and a lot of effort. And this will appeal to a lot of people, but like there is demand for it because it's already almost reached its $150,000 goal. And there's still almost 2 months left, or just over a month left in the campaign. So, like this is good for companies that want to experiment with different form factors, and you know, we'll link to this device in the show notes. But basically, what it is, it's an unlocked LTE Android phone, and it's just for people who don't want to worry about, breaking their phone. And you can actually, like, kind of like the Xperia devices, you can film underwater and stuff. So it's also got that going for it. Drop proof. Yeah. So I like the fact that these companies are getting more recognition. I mean, OnePlus is a good example of that too.
Yeah. I just think, if you're gonna really make something different, make it for a really dedicated use case and see how many people there are to support that use case, and make it compelling around that use case, rather than like the difference between this stuff and then say, hey, Samsung, we put the screen over the edge just because we don't know why.
Because we have flexible display, so we're dying to use.
Yeah. And that'll probably lead to like cool phones 5 years from now. So I'm not begrudging them experimenting, but like at least with this stuff, you're like, I know a person who would love that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for us who have jobs designed to like tell people to not only see all the phones coming in and tell people which ones are the good ones and why. It's nice again for hardware to be exciting. Like to be like, oh, hey, this is like, you talk about CES, going to like CES 2008 and being like, look at all the crazy stuff that's here.
Well done. No, I totally agree with that. I think there's something to be said though for, like, I remember when Samsung was showing off their UM displays, the curved displays that eventually became the Galaxy Note Edge. And they showed that off in what, 2011, 2012 in CES?
2011.
And like that's 3 years lead time between basically a prototype and a finished product.
But it was so obviously a prototype. They had it in a glass box, and they literally only had like the flexible substrate. Like it was not even a display. It was like in a box, and you could take pictures of it, but you couldn't.
Yeah.
You couldn't look with your hands.
But when you see the reviews of the Note Edge, you think people were basically saying this is a great phone, but you should not buy it. Like that's the consensus I saw from most reviewers. You will get a really great Android phone from this, but it's way too expensive, and the Note 4 is an overall better phone.
Did anybody left-handed review it?
Yeah, Brad Mullen. He before he left for Weber Shandwick. So one of the nicest guys in tech, Brad Mullen, who was the mobile editor at Engadget, left to become a PR, a suit basically. Good luck to him. But
you're like, burn. I mean, all the best and everything.
Well, what can I say? It's one more great writer lost to the workplace.
To the
to the workplace. Good censorship. That was lovely.
But he's left-handed.
Make sure to go to his holiday party.
He's taking.
Yes, exactly.
He's taking his.
Weber Shandwick is one of the biggest PR agencies in the U.S. and they deal with like everybody. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with.
But he'll be dealing with everybody left-handed, right?
Yeah,
That's what we were talking about.
left-handed portfolio.
He wrote about the Note Edge.
Yeah.
He wrote about the Note Edge as a left-handed user, and basically said that it works. You have to turn the phone upside down so the home button is on the top, which is ridiculous. So, don't do that. But yeah, I mean, Samsung. This is not a populist device, even though it was made for the 96%. It's still very much a niche device, and I think they'll come out with the Note Edge 2 and the Note Edge 3, and by the Note Edge 4, it'll be a pretty good product, and that's how they do.
Well, it's the same with Yodaphone. That's what happened. Like Yodaphone, the first edition had like the to make the back like touch sensitive, they had to add a strip to the bottom of the display. They had like a touch sensitive strip on the back of the phone. So instead of the e-ink display being touch sensitive, they had this janky strip at the bottom that you had to use kind of like with your thumb as a cursor. It was really weird. It was like a trackpad. It never worked.
Yeah. Again, like that's not unusual when it comes to like first generation products too. I think we'll see a lot of. Well, I mean, if you compare the iPhone 6 to the iPhone 1, and you see just how much improvement has come, or the Nexus 6 to the Nexus 1, you realize 6 years seems to be like an eternity in the smartphone world. But really, if you go back now and try to use the Nexus 1 or the original iPhone, it's like it's not even. It's basically using a dumb phone, right?
Well, yeah, because the software doesn't even. But that's a really good example. So you see generationally these phones have offered significant iterative improvements on the same things that they were doing when they were first released. Whereas now it seems to be like there's that second wave of breaks in hardware where new hardware capabilities are being added.
But they have no choice because hardware is so mature and so commoditized that there's such a small difference between the Moto X and the Moto G that software is really the only differentiator they have.
Yeah, so why don't what if they released a Moto G that was super cheap?
They did. It's called the Moto E.
No, but like e-ink screen, super duper cheap.
Oh, get off!
Oh my God, get off the train!
No, what I'm saying, or they do something else. But what if like they're able to with the hardware, because you say that they're forced to because things have kind of commoditized, but also it's more like you reach that development point when things become that cheap and iterative, it opens up a window for you to do new stuff with hardware, because the core components to the experience that people expect have now been have now become much cheaper.
Yeah.
So,
but that's great. That's great because what it says is that people who couldn't afford a smartphone before can now get a great smartphone experience, and they're not relegated to using a black and white flip phone anymore. So, it's kind of like, we're privileged to say, oh, I'd love to be able to go back to an e-ink display, to be able to, not play games so much and get week-long battery life. But the fact is that people have been trying to get away from that for 5 years now, and it's getting to the point where.
But Daniel, it's not like I'm not going to play. It's also like I also now have 4 other mobile devices that I can play games on if I want to. Like tablets exist.
And you can play it on your watch, and that too.
So I think it's less like just eliminating that and more like, ooh, what if I restructure the way, instead of being the phone being the primary component, maybe I just make the phone for these things. Like I'm just tossing out ideas. I'm just saying it was really cool to kind of at least do that as a thought experiment.
No, I totally understand, and I think that focus is the big word here. I think being able to say that you want a more focused smartphone use case is awesome.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about the Ashton phone, because I think that's really
Ashton tablet?
The Ash Tab.
Well, let's talk about that in a second. I want to go move to Xiaomi. They announced, well, there's a rumor that Xiaomi may be debuting their next phone at CES, and that it may come to North America. Jane, you wrote about this. So, I mean,
Mm.
is this something? Do you think Xiaomi is ready? As the third biggest smartphone OEM in the world, do you think that they're ready to broach the North American market?
I think it's not a case of ready because I think I mentioned in my post, like you look at like, a company like Lenovo, where if you ask someone on the street, hey, like would you ever buy a Lenovo phone? A Canadian or someone in the US would be like, they make phones,
Yeah.
but but they were like, they might be like, oh, my computer at work is a Lenovo, like I've used ThinkPads my whole life, but they would be like, oh, I didn't even know they made phones, and that's a perfect example of a company that would like to think they're ready, has the money to do it, and just couldn't make it happen, and then they bought Motorola. So, and that was one of the key things people said about the acquisition for Motorola was that they were basically just gaining a foothold in the U.S. market and in the European market where their brand recognition wasn't doing much for them. So, Cat.
Where?
So,
Yeah.
Doug.
Hi, Kat.
Sorry. I've literally been petting my cat the whole podcast. He was kind of sleeping behind my laptop.
Oh my God, the
Um,
jokes are so easy. Don't let me do it.
No wonder you were so
Yeah.
distracted.
So, I don't know. I think it's like you can have all the money and you can have the drive to do it, but it's a hard market to break. And
The hardest
I don't know-
market to break.
Yeah, and maybe it's. I mean, Lenovo. I think I don't know if they said it or if it was one of those inside sources things, but they were saying that they just didn't have the carrier partners in the U.S. They didn't have those relationships.
Yeah.
Motorola did. So I don't know. I would like to see it. I mean, the OnePlus One has shown that people are willing to go online and buy a phone off contract for $300, $350. So it would be nice. I don't know if I want it to happen, and if it was going to happen, it would be a giant announcement at CES that would slowly peter out into nothing if it failed. But
Would they do it at CES or MWC?
that's the rumor is CES.
Yeah, I don't think MWC is basically reserved for like more established brands in
Yeah.
Europe. Xiaomi
What?
would do
Yodaphone
better.
is at MWC. Yodaphone 2.
Yeah, in Europe, like Xiaomi, basically all the Chinese manufacturers generally announce products at CES, and then all the
Yeah.
European manufacturers at MWC because that
Yeah.
makes sense. So the Mi 4, the Mi 4, was only announced in August, the Xiaomi Mi 4, and it's got a really great, roundup of hardware. It's got, a 1080p display. It's got a 13 megapixel camera. It's got a Snapdragon 801 chip. 3,100 milliamp hour battery. Like, this is a pretty decent device. It is made for the Chinese market, so I don't know if it's entirely Play Store ready. And like all the other OEMs that come over to North America, it would need to be certified by Google and all that stuff. But I mean, this is a very nice phone, and I checked one out when I was in New York. Paul O'Brien from Motoco had it with him, and he really liked it. And yeah, I mean, they're getting to the point where they can sell these devices for $300 and still be making money, and they're very competitive.
Yeah, and the Mi 5 is basically, the same, but more. Like Snapdragon 810, like a 4K display, a 20 megapixel camera. Those are the rumors.
Yeah. You're just listing off specs, though.
Yeah, it's like bigger, beefier.
But like, it's like...
I don't think, but the thing is, I think if your goal is to make a $300 phone, they don't need to do that.
Well, I
Why
mean, it
can't
comes
they
down to
just-
the software, too.
Yeah.
My UI is actually a really interesting version of Android. I played with it back in the day when it's you can put it on as a custom ROM, and it's beautiful, but it's very much like Xiaomi initially created it as an alternative to iOS for Chinese people who couldn't buy an iPhone. So that was it. Like it has no app drawer. It's very iPhone-like. The UI is very colorful, and the latest version of my UI looks a lot like iOS 8 or iOS 7. So, it's nice. It looks good, but Xiaomi needs to differentiate themselves.
Yeah. So another company wants to come in and make a name for itself by doing the stuff that we already have.
Yeah, pretty much. Lenovo, the Ashton phone.
Tablet.
Ash tab.
Ash Tab.
Could you
So-
imagine that thing as a phone? Good lord.
It's
That's a hunk of
Oh, I can't even
anime.
imagine it as a tablet.
So this is the Yoga Tablet Pro 2.
God damn the names.
Yoga
Neil,
Tablet
try to
2
say
Pro,
that very
sorry.
Slowly.
It's a mouthful, and it's a big tablet. It's 13 inches. It's got an enormous, like, very high resolution display. It's really well made, and
Yeah, I was super impressed by the build quality, man. Like, I was when that thing came in, or just even when we heard the announcement, I wasn't expecting much, to be honest. But I wasn't expecting to like it to just feel so good.
ooh, feels so good.
It does feel so good, but you weren't like Lenovo, I don't know. Like, you don't think that the ThinkPads are sexy?
I love the ThinkPads. I think Lenovo is the only manufacturer to buy a PC with. What?
Look at this face. Do I think the ThinkPads are sexy?
No, but you can't argue that build quality is amazing.
I
Okay.
think the ThinkPads are sexy.
You could, yeah, like, and they're awesome. I was at CES last year, and someone spilled a beer on.
Speared me with a
Someone,
Lenovo.
someone spilled a beer on my keyboard while I was working at the press table. Someone knocked their beer over my keyboard, and someone was like, "Oh man, it's too bad you have a MacBook Air. If you had a Lenovo, that wouldn't happen." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he just took out a bottle of water and lifted up his computer while it was on and poured a bottle of water all over his keyboard. And he was like, "Still works."
Seriously, was it the same guy who spilled beer on your keyboard?
No, it was Alex Davies.
Shout out, Alex.
Alex Davies, while I was sitting there weeping at the thought that my laptop might never work again because I had bought it a week before, was like, "Oh, this wouldn't happen if you didn't buy that stupid machine." And I was like, not helping.
Well,
I hope he
No.
brought you a towel or something to clean up the beer
it's just a
while he was gloating.
no.
No,
Why?
but he did visit several small crappy companies and ask. It was actually the guy I used to work with, Tom's Hardware, Marcus, I was at Showstoppers at CES, and he was like, "Come on, there's like 1,000,001 crappy companies here. I bet one of them sells you something that like fixes wet electronics." So he just went to
Totally.
a few different ones and was like, "Hey, do you guys have anything for like phones that get wet?" So we ended up with like 4 little baggies that you're supposed to put your phone in and shake and then leave it there overnight. So we had like little baggies of beads, and the 3 of us were trying to figure out how could we possibly translate this to like laptop dryer as opposed to phone dryer.
Yeah. Well, the toughest thing is like if it's not water, it's more like the sediment or other things in the
Yeah,
liquid
the
that when
crusted-
it dries goes on like
It's the sugars, really.
It was only a
Yeah.
Heineken brand. Like, it wasn't proper beer.
yeah. So just all the magic and fun that happens at the CES press room.
Which we will be at in about a month.
We will be that magic and fun.
Spilling beer. So the Yoga 2 tablet Pro.
Don't
So
put
you-
beer on
yeah,
it.
You actually played with the Pico projector. Like I watched you guys just shine it at things, but I wasn't really paying attention to how well it worked with. I know I've been tasked with the review, but like what was your initial impression of that? Because that's the hybrid thing, right?
It's hard to say because like the room we were playing with it was so bright.
Yeah, I mean, it was very impressive that it could, light up a wall in the middle of the day with, pretty decent quality. And it's quite impressive that, I mean, it really doesn't add much of anything. Like, it doesn't really deplete battery very much. It's very light and portable for a huge tablet. I mean, this is, I think, smaller and thinner than the Surface Pro 3, which is about the same size.
Yeah.
Ironically,
Well, it also
this
kind of gives it its own stand too.
Yeah.
Almost, right.
And
Is
you
the
can
way
hang
that they
it.
integrated it.
like, yeah, it's pretty ingenious how they did that, because it's got a really sturdy stand, and you can actually pull it vertical and hang it off anything like a hook or something, and Ashton Kutcher plays with it on his fridge, which is bizarre
Was
in that
not
promo
expecting
video.
to be the word at the end of that sentence. But yeah, I guess so for people who haven't seen it, the one thing they should note is that the Pico projector works perpendicular to the depth of the tablet. So the projector itself runs as a curved tube along the top end of the tablet. So it's actually projecting out to your left if you're looking at the tablet face on. So it's
Right.
not. It's a little different, but I guess in situations where you'd want to be projecting the projection is for everyone else in the room to see, and then you're looking at the tablet in like a presentation mode.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, it's running an Intel chip, and it's one of the latest Atom chips. It's a quad-core Atom Z3745. It's one of the more powerful ones, and
What's the lumens on that puppy?
the lumens on the, I don't know,
Projector.
on the projector?
Yeah.
Doesn't say. I'm looking at it now. It just says integrated projector, but it's got
Just says
dual front-facing speakers.
Contains lumens.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, it's an interesting tablet. We'll put it through its paces and see what stands up,
You know what's interesting is that
literally or
to
figuratively.
go back to the build quality is that I just was listening to you guys talk about it, and I think Daniel was like, oh, it's thinner and lighter than the Surface Pro 3, but it's actually not. Surface Pro 3 is 9.1 millimeters, and this one is 15 millimeters.
Oh, at its biggest. That's not entirely accurate because 50 millimeters is only at the one side. It's sort of a weird. Yeah, it's where the projector is and where the power button is.
So how thick is it? I'm having trouble finding it. I think one site mentioned it, but because the reason it kind of like tricked the tripwire for me, because I was like pretty sure the Surface Pro 3 is the thinnest core whatever device. So I was like, I think the Surface Pro 3 is pretty thin. I don't know if it's thinner than that. But
Yeah,
it does,
but it's also this isn't a core device.
Feel
This
like
is
it
a-
has, no, I
this
know.
is
I'm
Atom.
saying that this is like I know the Surface Pro 3 to be as a thin device. So that's why I was like, oh, I wonder is it, but it doesn't feel thicker.
It's just
anyway.
it's not weighted the same. The Lenovo is weighted on one side. It's a little bit
It's
awkward to
fine.
hold.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's just a dense heavy metal.
Yeah, I mean, compared to the first Lenovo Android tablet, this is a night and day improvement. Like they came onto the market a couple of years ago, or maybe less than that, with a MediaTek powered, like underpowered 10-inch tablet that was really, really bad. Like everything about it was just underwhelming. And this is a completely different product. They've come a long way in a very short time. So, yeah, I'm pretty impressed with it. Let's talk about Lollipop, because like, what the frig?
I want my lollipop.
What the frack?
Lick it
Yeah.
like a lollipop.
Don't make me swear, Google.
So Lollipop is being rolled out to Nexus devices. Android 5.0.1 was just released for the Nexus 9, 10, and 7 2013 edition, and will probably roll out to the Nexus phones after the all the certification goes through. So 5.0.1, I installed it on my Nexus 9 today. It's basically just like a bug fix update. I haven't noticed a lot of changes. Actually, I haven't noticed any changes other than it just feels slightly faster. But again, that's just placebo probably. It's good that Google's rolling out these updates quickly. I think obviously with every Android .0 update, there's always a 0.1 fix a couple of weeks later.
The dot.
Yeah, I mean, like, bugs are par for the course with Android. But hopefully now that 5.0.1 is out, this will be the one that OEMs use to push out to their own devices. So the
HTC 1M8 and 1M7 GB edition got 5.0.1 this morning.
yeah, which probably means that they were waiting for Google to say, "Hey, this is the software that you need to use."
Yeah. Because they were delayed it for a couple of weeks.
That's actually that's the big thing that I don't think we talk about when it comes to like OEM certification. It's more like we kind of have to wait for Google to get a build of the new Android stable, and then we'll go with that one. You know, rather than whatever the launch version is.
Yeah, that's not uncommon.
I know, I'm just saying, but that extends the timelines for the OEMs, and we tack that on.
Mm-hmm.
And without giving them the credit of like, well, yeah, we might want to wait until the language bugs and the crashing or the image glitching is gone. You know.
That's true. That when they release it to AOSP, it's not the real release because they will inevitably update
But
it again.
what is 5.0.1 fix? I thought it basically was just like something related to factory reset for passwords, and then something with playback on the Nexus 7 or 9 or something.
Well,
I wasn't aware that there was more significant changes.
But obviously, I mean, let's hope it fixes the French-Canadian bug. Because that's the bug that delayed the Canadian release of the Nexus 6 on TELUS.
Yeah, and there's always stuff in there that they won't mention.
Yeah.
That has been corrected. Or just even optimized if they're like, oh, this part's running a little slow. Little memory drag here. You need to clean it up.
Yeah, if I recall, KitKat got the same update. They had like 4.4 was released, and then 4.4.1 was released pretty soon after.
Guys, can we talk about cats for a second?
Sure.
My cat is the
Cat
cutest
6.
cat in the world, and he is just in love with it right now. He loves this podcast so much, he wants to listen to it live.
My cat has decided that she can't stand the podcast because she's usually here every week and she's not here now. So we are subpar this week.
Oh.
It's the lack of swearing. She's like, screw this, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So what else is on the docket? New hot stuff. CES preview. What are you guys looking forward to?
All the terrible products.
Oh yeah, we were talking about this yesterday. We want to like, Daniel and I may forego all other CES coverage just to write about the sketchy, dodgy, crappy stuff that we find in the hall.
Yes. And we're going to have a dedicated section on the site to focusing on that.
Yeah.
We haven't told Ian yet, but...
Ian, it's going to be mobilesyrup.com/cesspool. You get the.
That's a great name.
You get Dev on that.
Preview.
Yeah, you get Dev on that.
Just an image gallery presented without comment.
Yeah. You get Dev on that page, and we'll produce the content.
We're gonna rock the Vine and the the Instagrams,
MobileSyrup on Vine,
social media,
the Snapchats. We're gonna have a Snapchat channel.
Oh, we should have a Snapchat channel for Vegas.
For Vegas,
it
totally.
Only end well.
I'm not joking. And hopefully we're going to be able to use our phones down there because in years past the coverage on T-Mobile has been non-existent.
Yep.
Coverage on most of the carriers is pretty brutal in that
super
space.
It's terrible.
But it's been 2 years since I've been, so let's hope that things are.
I'm hoping it's a good one because I think it reminded me when Doug was talking about earlier on where a product comes out and then they make all these little tweaks and changes over the years, and that's kind of what CES is. It's like you go and you're like, oh my god, this is so exciting, like all this new stuff, and then you go the next year and you're like, oh, it's kind of just the same stuff as last year. And the stuff last year was super exciting because it was new, and then the stuff this year is, I saw last year. Like, that was the same for like the massive TVs, like 3D TV, like all those kinds of things. So last year was kind of like, the general vibe I got from the show floor is that everyone was kind of like, that's okay. So
it's a little bit of a pleasure delay. Like, I don't think, we do events in a yearly cadence because of like business requirements and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But tech doesn't necessarily move at that speed. So I think you're right that like if you go every second year, you'll get a much better sense of like.
But the thing is, it's not even as reliable as every second year because sometimes you can have 2 great years in a row and then you can have 2 sucky years.
That's true.
So you just got to go every year and eat the tiny food and
okay. Well,
drink fruity drinks.
Survey. What do you think were like some of the best events you've ever been to? Like in terms of the year, like what years did you walk away and be like, oh my god, the future is now, or the future is in like 3 months? Like, is there an event and a year that resonates in your mind where you're like that was just an explosive year of tech?
Well,
last year was pretty great for wearables.
It was an interesting year for wearables because a lot of the wearables that we are seeing kind of come to fruition now and that we're taking for granted were just sort of prototypes.
So Yeah, last year was okay for wearables in that sense, but it was the year before that was like magic for wearables. Daniel, that was the year that I ran into you there. And that was the year that our friend Tom Emmerich was just camped out in the wearables corner on the show floor because everything there was so exciting. And it was
Yeah.
the wearables corner was right next to the 3D printing, and they were like 3D printing food. And I was like, the future is now. I want 3D printed chocolate. Seriously, they were 3D printing chocolate bars, and it's like crowds of people.
Computer, tea, Earl Grey, hot.
Yeah. So that was pretty magical because the wearables. So last year was kind of like, oh yeah, this is like the wearable stuff that they're still working on from before. What are you excited for, Daniel? What do you expect? There's always a trend, right?
Yeah, I really I wanted to, like, the mobile stuff last year was pretty unimpressive, and in 2013 the only real announcements were the Huawei Ascend Mate and the Sony Xperia Z.
Mm-hmm.
And Sony does their big announcements every year, but I don't even know if they're going to be announcing anything this year because they just announced the Z3 at
Well, rumor
EFA.
has it they're gonna keep going with their bad selves and their very
We'll see.
brisk updates and go with the Z4, but
You
But-
can't tell Sony nothing.
yep.
I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of looking forward to it only because
It's in Vegas.
I'm looking forward to it because this year it seems like the wearables aspect of the show will be a little bit more concrete. It'll be less about. I know that there's going to be a lot of Apple Watch kind of pretenders,
Yeah.
and that's fine. But I think there will be a lot of stuff that supports Android Wear. We're getting to the point now where wearables are becoming an industry in and of themselves, and they're taking the place of mobile. The Mobile World Congress has become the place where most OEMs will announce their big products, and
Yeah.
CES is more about supporting the mobile space. But I
Yeah.
think wearables will be front and center this year. A lot of VR. I look forward to trying the Oculus V2, and a lot of the VR stuff there is cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm just ready to have my head blown about all this. It's innovation, right? That's really what it is.
It's interesting what you said though about the wearables. And we're gonna have like a lot of Apple Watch pretenders. That's something that you see. I think 2009 was just right around when the T-Mobile G1. I don't know if you guys got it in Canada. I think it was the HTC Dream
Yeah.
everywhere else, but that was like the T-Mobile G1 was like the first Android phone, and that year was it was kind of you saw that, and then the following year it was every crappy Chinese manufacturer in every corner of dark deep crack of the room was showing off a really terrible Android tablet.
Yeah,
And
the early days of Android were just like
terrifying. It was so
it was
scary.
like the CES show
so
floor of
scary.
tech.
It was like, yeah, they were like, oh, you can do this now, just throw it on, it's cool. And then the year after that was e-readers. So I'm hoping that wearables this year won't be like, hey, everybody's doing it, and then we're gonna see, well, that could be promising. I mean, that could go well for CESpool. Could be like, hey, check out this like fitness tracker sock.
Well,
I mean-
but I think. Oh, go ahead, Dan.
Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say I think that like the as exciting as it was to have companies showing wearables last year and the year before, it was just the excitement was more based upon like, hey, here's a new product category rather than anything that the devices were doing themselves. Because that initial like surge was like, hey, we can get these components onto your wrist at a certain price point, rather than I think. The wearable stuff this year might be more exciting because they either know what they want them to do or they can make them do things. So I think this year for wearables will be, I don't know, maybe not exciting, but just more satisfying.
Yeah, it better be, because last year I saw a beanie with an integrated headphones, and I was like, nobody wants this. And they were like, it's wearables, and I was like, no, you can't just like get like 2 layers of fabric and just like shoehorn like. Yeah.
Yeah. Do not put a toaster in my top hat and call it new tech.
Can you imagine?
Actually, please, someone at CES put a toaster in a top hat and we will cover it.
Well, I mean, the last time I was there, the wearables stuff, like the smartwatch stuff, was really disappointing. There was the smartwatch 2 from Sony, which ran Android, and then there was this Italian company called iMwatch that ran Android, and it was really terrible. And then there was the the fork. What was it? The fork.
Oh, the vibrating fork that says "Slow down, fatty." Yeah.
Slow down, fatty fork. And I mean that's the kind of stuff you see at Pepcom.
Radio Shack
and Radio Shack. Eventually,
Pepcom.
It shows up at Pepcom and it ends up at
Pepcom.
There was also a Bluetooth toothbrush, and it was like, yeah, we'll feed this data to the app that your dentist can download, and he can tell whether you're brushing for long enough or properly.
He knows anyway.
He knows.
They know. He knows.
It's like, a mother always knows. It's like you can't lie to the dentist.
Well, it's okay. Do you guys think that we just with what's coming up, like with CES dropping like a hot turd in January, and Mobile World Congress being pushed back farther into February, early March range?
Yeah, it's usually the end of February. I think it's like first week of March this year, like the 2nd to the 5th.
I think it's part of the move. It changed the timing a bit.
Come on, it's a week. It's not anything. We couldn't get the convention center.
Yeah, but you're now at the almost the end of the first quarter. Do you think that there's going to be more interesting stuff, especially with some of the delays that we've seen hitting in that timeline?
Oh, for mobile,
actually having stuff ready for CES, because maybe they'll have it there or announced at CES, but it's usually much more likely that at Mobile World Congress they're going to have it like on hand for you to try, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be any big announcements from major OEMs at CES. They don't do that anymore.
Yeah, and that's the frustrating thing is that you ask them, hey, have you got anything for CES? And they either say we're waiting for Mobile World Congress, or they say we're waiting for the noise to die down so that we can announce it, when not everybody else is announcing stuff too.
Yeah. They want to do it on their own time, and Samsung.
They want to soak up all the press.
Yeah, they want to have their own press conference, and they can't really do that at CES.
Yeah. There's a lot of people at those companies where if you just ask them straight up why they're there, they'd be like, because we had to come because it's CES, but they don't have they're looking for things to fill their booth with to make people want to come.
Yeah, Microsoft decided not to go anymore a couple of years ago. It makes so much sense because their booth was always massive, and going to the Microsoft booth at CES is like going to the Microsoft store. It's like, oh, here's a whole bunch of like random electronics that I'm moderately associated with. Like, so here's like a bunch of mice, and there's the Xbox over there, and then there's some laptops made by other companies that run Windows.
Yeah.
And eventually, you look down and there's a bunch of rats on the floor just like scurrying about. It's like, oh, welcome to Vegas.
Tumbleweed with like a stripper caught inside.
Port Fest.
Tumble stripper?
Tumble stripper.
I gotta admit, Vegas is the least favorite place to go to. If I never have to go
no.
Oh, come on.
Vegas is the best.
What
about like
it's like growing up Disneyland.
I think there's more fun to be had in Des Moines than in Vegas.
Oh.
At least I won't.
But you're the person who wants to give up your phone for an e-reader.
Yeah.
A 3G connection.
I don't know if we can
How much
trust
fun
anything you
could
say.
you possibly be having?
I'm really representing. Well, compare that to walking down La Rambla in Barcelona. Like, come on now.
I'm getting mugged.
Hmm.
That's what happens to everybody who goes to Mobile World Congress is because they have to print on the back of the badges, remove your conference pass from your neck before you get on the subway.
If you are carrying your passport, you are not making it home.
Yeah.
Shout out Simon Sage, by the way, who had all this stuff stolen. But I think it's more pickpocketing than straight up mugging. But but that adds an element of European danger to the whole thing, right?
Speaking as someone from Europe, you don't need the danger aspect.
Oh,
it's not
from
necessary.
from technically Europe. But Vegas is just more just like 4 o'clock in the morning, counting your remaining chips, and trying to get a calm drink, and hating yourself.
Yeah, but that's the best part of it, is that you don't remember
I don't think I've ever.
stupid things you do.
No.
You're just so unhappy the whole week.
This podcast took a very dark turn.
It's not that dark.
Well,
Ask us
we'll
again
see.
in January.
Hey,
Exactly.
speaking of dark, the Lumia 1030.
Is never coming out.
Yeah. So sad.
Well,
not surprising.
hopefully Microsoft doesn't forget its high-end,
Like it forgets its apps.
Oh my God, yeah. So last night we were looking at, our app roundup of the week, and we found this hashtag, "Don't forget about your app." Or what is it? Don't
Sorry,
forget your
Jeff.
app.
Don't forget your own app.
Yeah,
And
Don't
it's
forget your
what
own app.
it's what Windows Phone users use to tweet at Instagram and Snapchat and all those people.
Earmuffs,
Snapchat
Jeff.
doesn't
Earmuffs.
doesn't
I
have
know.
a
The
Windows Phone app.
Snapchat, you'd be surprised, gets called out a lot. They're like, "Hey, great update for iOS. How about one for Windows Phone? Hashtag
Yeah.
Don't forget your own app." So, and gets used all the time. Like I was like, this is a hashtag that gets used once a month. But no, there was like 7 tweets alone yesterday. And 7 doesn't seem like a lot, but that's a lot.
It is a lot.
Every day.
Oh well, can't.
So 10:30 is not. It's also don't forget your own phone.
Don't forget your own phone. Edition, Microsoft Edition. I don't know. I mean, it makes sense. The 1020
Yeah.
is still sort of a relevant device for Microsoft, but they've supplanted the 1020 with the 930 and the 1520. So even though none of them are in Canada, they're still better phones in many ways, except for the camera.
Yeah. Microsoft right now is way more focused on mobile, not in a hardware way.
Yeah, and they want to build really great experiences for Android and iOS because that's where the market is.
Yeah. So they just purchased that email company, or that company.
Yeah, Comply.
Yeah. And I think it's so tough signing up for a device and a platform, and I think that consumer confidence needs to be really high, and I don't think consumer confidence in Windows Phone, despite the amount of phones that they're selling, which are decent. I don't see Microsoft really making that a priority.
They're not really selling in any great quantity, and the phones that are selling are not the high-end phones. They're the 530s, 535s, 620s, 630s, which that makes sense because that's a market that iOS has not dominated, and it's easier to go up against cheaper Android phones that aren't always as good. But in the high-end space, Android and iOS are just completely dominant. So, I mean, it makes sense why they're doing that. But still, I mean, don't forget about your, bread and butter.
Yeah, it's interesting to say that, Microsoft isn't really focused on hardware. They're more focusing on, the software experience on mobile. And it's like, well, yeah. Even then, they're focusing on other platforms as opposed to, improving the experience for users on their own platform.
Yeah, because the only reason they got into the hardware because of this legacy idea that they had to own the platform for their software to be on. And then they're like, why don't we just make good software everywhere and tie people into our services and make money that way?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, distributed cloud.
Office 365 is a good example of that. And Jane, you went to a summit yesterday all about that.
Yeah, and it was one of the things that it was slightly surprising, but it goes to show the kind of shift that's happening in Microsoft's.
Oh, we lost her.
Oh, we lost her.
Cloud and what's that? The on stage we were talking about.
You're back.
Am I back?
Yeah,
Okay.
You're back now.
It was really interesting. It shows the shifting face of cloud and mobility at Microsoft is that you've been at Microsoft events before where Steve Ballmer, threatens to smash someone's iPhone because they dare bring the iPhone with them. And then you have yesterday, which was they're talking about how you can work on any device that you want, and the guy on stage giving the keynote was like, yeah, so I can just pull out my iPad and yeah, that was is that calculated because they just released updated iPad apps. But it just goes to show that they're we want you to get the best experience across all your devices, and it's the same as they're one of the way they develop their features. I guess Julia, who I was talking about, she's the head of their Office 365 division, and she was saying a lot of corporations spend a lot of their time worrying about what their staff are doing and how they can stop them from doing it. I was like, we don't want them to share. We don't.
Yes. Shout out cats.
We don't want them to share. We don't want them to send this attachment to someone else, so we're not going to let them forward it. They're just going to turn around and forward it using Dropbox and forward it that way. So she was saying, Microsoft now is about how can we enable people to do what they want to do instead of forcing them to figure out workarounds. Because she was like, that's what people do. If you don't give them a way to do it, they'll just find a workaround.
Yeah.
So
and it's interesting with that though, because so we're Slack users. The other thread that's coming through is workflows starting to happen in the app. So everyone's trying to build in extensions into Slack so that the only thing that would ever happen in email is what email is for, versus everyone just living in a Slack world that plugs into every other application that's just kind of theirs as a home.
And Microsoft said that too. They were talking about how people have been saying email is dead for the last 10 years, and it's not. It's just that you can't use it for everything, and it's not good for everything.
Yeah.
So you should be sharing your attachments on OneDrive as opposed to emailing them back and forth and back and forth. So, but anyway, so Microsoft is doing great things for mobile, but their hardware is still not great.
Yeah, I think their hardware, it's kind of, they're doing what BlackBerry's doing in a sense. Is they're saying Windows Phone is the best portal for Office and Windows applications, but you can do everything you would want on other platforms as well. Like BlackBerry wants to be able to control BlackBerry devices, but they're also saying, hey, with BES 12 you can also control iOS and Android, and we're cool with that because we're a software and services company.
Yeah, because when you're forced to do things because of the business reality rather than it being in your company culture or that you really want to do, it usually doesn't work out that well. Mm-hmm. How many companies exist right now that are legit hardware software companies? One, and that's Apple, and they're the only one. Google isn't. Samsung isn't.
At all.
Microsoft tried, and despite releasing some good physical hardware, can't get the platform aspect down, or in being late, couldn't offer something so compelling or just defeat the network benefits. It's much better to have these companies and BlackBerry as well, who are good at doing what they do, rather than trying to have a soup to nuts experience and failing, right?
Yeah. Soup to nuts.
You're back. No, I don't know what I
knows why.
I think we're having network problems.
I just talked about soups and nuts.
No, I just think it's nice that...
Can our bandwidth handle the cats?
I don't know what's going on here. The cats are really high resolution cats.
Name
of our podcast, High Res Cats.
Fur density is really high.
High Res Cats.
For the cats.
But I think it's it's interesting that their attitude towards, hey, people in your workplace are already doing this, they're just doing it in ways that you don't want, so we should just give them ways to do what they want to do on Microsoft products, and that extends to their hardware. It's like, hey, people are going to use their iPads regardless, let's just make sure they're using Office 365 on the iPad.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
So that's about it. We wanted to talk a little bit about our fantastic listeners, and last week we had some great discussion around piracy and in-app purchases, and if you want to check those out, they're on the thread for our Dread Pirate podcast, episode 23. Thank you everybody for listening. I have some specific shout-outs that I wanted to make, but I can't find the link. Here it is. Everybody, thank you for encouraging us to swear. Unfortunately, Richard and
it's not gonna happen.
Jason and Clinton, we are hemmed in, unfortunately, because we'd like to bring our listenership to a broader audience, and that means having a clean rating on iTunes. So unfortunately, we're not going to be swearing anymore. But everybody, thank you so much for writing about your experiences with free-to-play and piracy, and I totally understand, Canada is a very strange environment where you are often forced into pirating TV shows that you can't legitimately buy without spending $40 to $80 on a cable subscription every month. Yeah. And I think Crave TV just got announced this week, and that's a good example of another kind of backwards-facing digital product that's reliant on the TV subscription to work properly. And I'd like to talk about that in a future episode.
Well, keep an eye out for our tete-a-tete, and maybe in this podcast post, write some comments on that or on that post, and then we'll take it up like next week or something.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna leave it. Leave a question to the readers this week or listeners this week. Do you think that Xiaomi is something that you would want to see happening in North America? Do you think that the third biggest smartphone OEM has a good chance of penetrating this very dense, North American smartphone market? And is that like OnePlus One or like OnePlus? Do you think that there's a demand there for high quality, low cost flagship Android phones, even if they don't run sort of a stock Android experience? So we're going to leave it there. And
one more thing. Richard Wangley said in the comments that he came to watch the video specifically to see the jumper that your grandma
he said sweater, Jane, sweater.
He said racism, I'm pretty sure. But anyway, if you could tweet out a picture of your jumper, that would be brilliant. Because Richard really wants to see it.
All right.
Well, because it'll happen. It'll be on the Instagrams or the face tweets.
I know, just because he said that the video quality was too switchy uppy, so he couldn't get a propaganda gander at it.
That's right.
So.
Well, that's Google Hangout's fault, really.
Tailored down. Yeah. When it's shrunk down my skinny boy size, I'll model it, and we'll just do a fashion spread on MobileSyrup. Like, why not?
Yeah.
That sounds really really fun. We can have a little calendar and everything. We can sell it like the full Monty.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's our show. I want to thank our sponsor, Roam Mobility. Check them out, roammobility.com. We are really happy to have a sponsor that we actually believe in. I believe in this company, and I use them whenever I go down to the States. And they're basically T-Mobile Plus, because instead of having to buy a prepaid SIM from T-Mobile and have your credits expire, you're getting T-Mobile LTE, you're getting really good customer support, and you're also getting the same or more data per day for the same price, and you can make unlimited phone calls back to Canada. So you're getting everything you would get from a prepaid SIM, plus more. They are a very good company, and I really highly recommend them. You do need an unlocked phone, so that is one thing, but if you do want to go that route, it's a lot cheaper than having a carrier-based roaming plan. So check them out, roammobility.com. Thanks again for sponsoring the show. And this was a fantastic episode. We will see you next week, and take care.
Bye.
Bye.